Hello everyone, buon pomeriggio, benvenuti, and thank you for being with us today. My name is Laura Cambriani, and I'm an Education USA and Fulbright advisor based in Rome. If you're not familiar with Education USA, it's the official network of the Department of State aimed at promoting the U.S. higher education system to international students interested in studying in the U.S. And we also advise the students university choice and admission preparation for free. So let's remember this, it's for free, gratis. And last but not least, there are two centers, one in Rome, where I'm currently in camp, you can see, and I cover central and northern Italy, and then there's my colleague in Naples, Federica Di Martino, and she advised students from the south of the country. So before giving the floor to our speakers, I would like just to remind you the next webinar, which will take place on October 5th at 4 p.m. led by NYU at Abu Dhabi. And the topic will be U.S. higher education and holistic admission. And without further ado, let me introduce you Rylan Good, Director of International Admission at Dickinson College, a liberal arts college in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, that also has a center in Bologna where speakers currently are. So, Rylan, it's your time.
Thank you, Laura. Hello, everyone. My name is Rylan Good. I am the Director of International Admissions here at Dickinson College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. And today I'm not going to spend too much time talking about Dickinson specifically, but really more about life at a liberal arts college, because I know that this is a concept that is not always well known around the world. And so today I'm going to be joined by a few students and alumni of Dickinson to talk about their liberal arts experience. But just to give you some background on Dickinson, we are one of the oldest liberal arts colleges in the entire country of the United States. We were actually founded and chartered back in 1783 by Dr. Benjamin Rush, a signer of the Declaration of Independence. We are a small liberal arts and science institution, and so we have around 2,300 students coming from around 38 states and around 40 different countries. We have an 8-to-1 student to faculty ratio. And what that means is that your classes are going to be very small. So the average class size at Dickinson is going to be about 14 students per class. Two things that we're really well known for is number one is going to be our really robust global engagement. So about 65% of our students end up studying abroad, and I'm joined by a few students who are studying abroad in Bologna, Italy right now. And we've actually been ranked #2 in the nation for our study abroad programs. In addition, we're also known for our sustainability efforts. And so Dickinson has been ranked #1 in the entire country for our sustainability efforts. And that is mainly because we are one of the first 10 colleges and universities in the United States to officially go carbon neutral. And so what this means is that we are not contributing to climate change. And so sustainability, global engagement, and hands-on learning are the key facets of a Dickinson College education. But because, again, many of you may not know and understand quite what a liberal arts college is or what it's really about, I wanted to take a moment to talk briefly about the difference between a large research university and a Dickinson college. So if you think about the size of the institution, this is going to be the biggest difference. For many of your universities, those universities are going to have between 10, 20, 40,000 students at one campus. At a place like Dickinson, we are small in size. And so that means that we have around 2,000 students at many of your liberal arts colleges. Because of the overall small size, your classrooms are going to be smaller. So at a large university, you may have classes of 150 students or 500 students in one class. But like I said, the average class size at Dickinson is only 14 students per class. Another difference is the degrees conferred by the institution. So a university typically will award bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees. But at a place like Dickinson, we are mainly focused on a bachelor's and undergraduate education. So what this means is that our students are going to get the attention from the faculty, they're going to get the opportunities for research, they're going to get the opportunities for time in the laboratories in some of your STEM classes. At Dickinson, we do not have big lecture halls, we do not use teaching assistants. And so you're going to be taught by your professors, but you're also going to engage in classroom discussions and not just being a passive member in the audience, just listening to a lecture. And so at Dickinson, you're really going to get a robust in-classroom experience, but then also robust outside the classroom experience. And then finally, the other difference and a really good key point about a liberal arts college is really when you have to decide when to choose your major. For some universities, you have to actually apply to a specific major before you attend that university. But at a liberal arts college, you have the first 2 years to take a lot of different classes, figure out what you're passionate about, and then eventually go into those areas. So in summation, because of the size of a liberal arts college, because of the approach to our education, I believe that at a liberal arts college, students and our graduates are graduating with more research opportunities, more publications, more time in laboratories, more internships, more interdisciplinary study, plus our students get to study abroad and spend time away from our campus. And so ultimately, I believe that this is going to turn into greater job opportunities, but then also amazing graduate school outcomes. And so that's exactly where Dickinsonians and other liberal arts college graduates end up. And so 96% of our students are employed, are in graduate school or a professional internship within just 1 year of graduating. If you're thinking about law school, Dickinson has a 94% acceptance rate into law school and a 95% acceptance rate into medical school. And because we're being hosted by the Fulbright office in Rome, we are a top Fulbright producing liberal arts college. And I'm actually joined today by one of our prestigious alumni who received the Fulbright for Italy. And finally, in terms of our international student graduates, they are just as successful as our United States domestic students. Tao Xu just graduated this year, and Tao is actually going to be attending Harvard School of Medicine for a master's degree in immunology. We have students going to Columbia University or MIT Harvard Broad Institute, or Nicole, who's from Greece, is actually going to be attending the Mayo Clinic for Graduate School for Biomedical Sciences. And so we believe that a liberal arts college sets international students and domestic US students up for greater success after graduation because they have had so many different opportunities for research and laboratory time and study abroad during their time at Dickinson or another liberal arts college. So that is just a preview of the benefits and kind of the differences between a liberal arts college and a university. But with that, I want to turn it over to my panel. I'm going to have them introduce themselves, and then as you have questions, feel free to throw them into the Q&A for our panelists. And I know that we have some pre-registered questions that I'll go over in just a little bit. So Hannah, I'm going to hand it over to you. If you can introduce yourself, and we'll go from there.
Hello, everyone. So nice to be here today. My name is Hannah Grothusen, and I am an International Studies and Economics double major with a minor in Italian, and I'm currently a senior. Right now, I'm studying abroad in Bologna, Italy, so that's super exciting. But when I'm on campus, I am a tour guide, which is what the Liberty Cap Society is. I'm part of a sorority, Delta Nu, Women in Economics, which is a club, and then I work for the Center for Civic Engagement and Learning and the Dickinson College Farm, and I also volunteer as a beekeeper. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. I'm really excited to answer all of your questions.
Hi, my name is Sadie Fowler. I'm also a senior. I'm from Quakertown, Pennsylvania, and I'm an International Studies and Educational Studies double major with a minor in Italian. And like Hannah, I'm also studying abroad in Bologna. And when I'm on campus, I'm part of Kappa Delta Pi, which is an international education honor society. I'm part of Wheel and Chain, which is also like an honors, a senior honors female like society. I volunteer tutoring English as a second language with ComServe. I'm part of the Italian Club, and I'm also part of Dickinson Christian Fellowship. And that picture is actually from just a month ago in August. I was in Iceland for Dickinson, actually. I went with a class for 2 weeks to study glaciers and volcanoes.
Hi, I'm Anna. I am also a senior, also studying in Bologna right now. I'm from California, but picked Dickinson because of its small liberal arts attributes. I am majoring in Russian language and literature with a minor in Italian studies, and then I'm also getting a certificate in security studies. On campus, I'm very active in the Dickinson equestrian team, and then an a cappella group called the Crescent Devils. And then I also headed Russian club for the last 2 years before coming abroad.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. Happy to be here. I am Delphine Dall'Agata. I graduated from Dickinson in 2017, so I'm an alum. While I was at Dickinson, I studied Italian and Spanish as a double major, and I was involved in some clubs, the Italian Club, Global Ambassadors, and a ComServe volunteer group, as well as the college choir and the dance theater group. After Dickinson, I actually returned to Italy, where I had also studied in Bologna previously, and I returned to teach English for a year, and then actually applied and received a Fulbright research grant in Turin. And now I am working in Turin at a UN agency that has headquarters in Geneva in Switzerland, but has a training center based in Turin in Italy.
Awesome. So I'm super excited to be joined by all 4 of our students and alumni. And so as you have questions, throw them into the question and answer box. And it can be really about anything. It can be about the academics at a liberal arts college. It can be about student life, living on campus, studying abroad, and internships. So I know that Laura, you have some questions already. So do you want to pose the first question for our panelists?
Sure. So the first question is about the declaration, because in Italy, let's say the higher education system is stricter than the American one. So when you start during the first semester, you start taking the exams of the program you will major. Let's say in Italy, we don't say that I have a major in, we say I graduate in. So since the first semester, you start taking specific exams. So my curiosity is about the first year, because I assume that every student has a tutor helping with the schedule, okay? So I imagine that you take 5 courses per semester. So I would like to know what you usually attend during the first year, and then the major declaration. And then I saw that, for instance, Delphine has a double major, and I've seen in Anna, I forgot to take for the Hannah and Sadie presentation, so I had Anna. I had like an interesting combination between major and minor, which in it's impossible to do, because as I was saying, there's a path that you have to follow, and there are very few elective exams. So there are many things that I would like to know. So what do you usually study during your first year? If there's like a tutor helping you with the courses choice, and then about the combination of major and minor, or like what happens when you double major?
Okay, there's a lot there. And so I'm first curious for our panelists, how many of you knew exactly what you wanted to study whenever you came to Dickinson? No. Okay. Sadie, did you have something to say there?
I actually thought I knew exactly what I wanted to do. But because, like you said, one of the things that we do is called a first year seminar, is that freshmen or the first year students were pick a class that we're interested in by topic. In August, like we hear about classes that we're interested in, and that professor becomes our mentor for like the first year, and they help us pick other classes we're interested in. And so I thought I was going to be a social studies teacher and do educational law. So I was planning on doing a pre-law track with education and history. And I ended up taking a class in international studies, psychology. I took a women and gender sexuality studies class. I took economics my freshman year. So I had a big conglomeration of these classes. And basically by the time I entered my sophomore year, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore, but I really enjoyed my political science and international studies classes, which is how I ended up with my double major as both international studies and education. And then at Dickinson, we have a language requirement. And so with the Italian department, I fell in love with the Italian department, with the culture and the opportunities. And as I'm interested in social studies, education in Italy as well, that's how I ended up with my minor in Italian. But I think, yeah, for Hannah and Anna as well, like they definitely have a little bit of a difference, particularly with Anna with her security studies certificate.
Yeah, so Anna, can you talk about your first year at Dickinson and kind of how you landed at a major, a minor, and a certificate?
Sure. So my freshman year, I came in and knew that I wanted to study languages already, but I thought that I would minor in one language, study one on the side for fun, and major in international studies. But I took a couple of economics courses, which were required for the international studies major, and realized it was not for me, and quickly changed my mind to study Russian instead, which I had already taken a history course in, a politics course in, and of course my language courses. So I had taken a good chunk of classes that were needed for international studies already. And because of that, I already had the support needed to dive into a security studies certificate, which is just a very small version of the international studies major, basically. And then Italian was just the second language that I had chosen to study when I entered college, and taking one course a semester just about rounds out the minor. So I declared it, and I have about, I think, 2 classes left now.
Hannah, can you talk about the timeline of declaring a major in the United States and kind of your friends at Dickinson? When do they typically land on a major compared to kind of the European system?
Yeah, so like Anna and Sadie were saying, I did not know what I wanted to study when I came in. And that's part of what attracted me to Dickinson, is I knew I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I didn't pick my major until the first semester of my sophomore year. And that was actually very helpful because I was able to use my first year at college to take 8 wildly different classes and decide what made the most sense for me. I originally thought I was going to be environmental science. I took 2 environmental science classes, loved them, but I loved other classes more. And I think that that's a pretty typical progression where people will come in either thinking they know what they want to do or having no clue, and then finding something that they really love and end up switching towards or getting a minor in this. Like I have friends who are majoring in biology but have a minor in English. And so the liberal arts experience allows you to have the flexibility to pick different things that you're interested in. So it doesn't make you focus on one initially, rather you can kind of sample a whole conglomerate of things that you're interested in and pick from there. And so I think that's a very typical thing to pick not until your sophomore year.
Great. And then Delphine, if you could round us out, majors, double majoring. So in terms of cramming as much into your 4 years at a US liberal arts college, how did that kind of come about?
Yeah, thanks. As similarly to the other three, I also went into Dickinson. Well, what I thought I had a very clear plan of what I wanted to do. I had this dream of being an international spy for the CIA. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take international studies in Arabic. And then after about 2 days, I realized that this was not for me. And I think one added tidbit on course selection is that the first week you're allowed to switch your courses. And that's how I actually ended up in an Italian course that was happening at the same time as my previous Arabic course. And that drastically changed my life, my future, and where I am today. So these kinds of decisions that you make along your path actually truly form your journey. And they're important to also channel in what you're feeling and trust your gut, because they have, these are, topics that you're dedicating a lot of time to. And I ended up declaring, yes, this double major. So it was a full course load and very enriching experience. I had been studying Spanish since middle school, so I already had a good foundation, but Italian, I was starting from scratch. So it was a good way to balance the two languages. Spanish was already more in depth in literature courses and culture courses, while Italian was purely, the starts and the backbones and the grammar. So learning to balance this double course load in a double language was definitely a challenge, but definitely worthwhile, because now I'm using these language skills every single day in the workplace. So it's worth investing the time and being able to also, have these study abroad experiences to, accelerate your language immersion and fluency.
So Delphine, can you confirm you are not an international spy?
I am not, and I was born in from Chicago, born and raised. So
I'll make sure. Laura, does that answer your questions or any additional questions?
Of course, I have some other questions. I was curious to see that Delphine from Illinois and from California went to Dickinson in Pennsylvania. So I'm very curious, and how, well, in general, for all of you, how did you pick? So why did you choose Dickinson, and also what, I suggest to the advisee there's a website like Big Future College Board, and I suggest them to register so that they get some emails with information with colleges according to the information that they share when they register. So I was wondering, how did you discover, how did you realize that Dickinson College existed? And I'm telling you this because the higher education system is a huge one in the US. So how did you understand, how did you realize that Dickinson was the perfect fit? That's what we call it at Education USA. And so did you also register in the Big Future College Board, or maybe did you attend some fairs? So suggestion to Italian students that would like to learn more about the higher education system besides Education USA, that maybe it's something new that you are learning today.
So there are a lot of resources out there for high school students, including Big Future, which is a resource by College Board. So I'm curious, all of you, why did you end up choosing Dickinson? And then I think the second part of Laura's question is, how did you find Dickinson? So I'm going to start with Sadie, and then we'll go Anna, Hannah, and then Delphine.
So I always knew I wanted to go to a liberal arts college because it was small, and I always enjoyed a pretty close relationship with my teachers in middle school and high school, and I knew that was the type of individualized attention I wanted. And so I come from a family where I have 3 older brothers, and both my parents all went to college. So I am lucky to have had that background and support. One of the things I did was, I'm an hour north of Philadelphia, which has a major convention every year. So I was able to attend and just walk around like hundreds of stands of colleges. In fact, I was actually entertaining going to John Cabot, a university in Rome, actually. But so there were a lot of things like this. And I found Dickinson because we had a family friend who went there, and it was similar to colleges like Vassar College or Gettysburg, Bucknell, other colleges that I have family friends or like high school friends that attended. And so Dickinson, it's only a 2-hour drive east for my family. And so it was very easy for me to visit. And so I found Dickinson, I think, just kind of by association of the fact that it is a small liberal arts school. It's in the eastern Pennsylvania, or like it's still in Pennsylvania, and it's in the Northeast, which is where I wanted to stay. So.
Great. So Sadie went 2 hours away. Anna, you went more than 2 hours away. So how did you find Dickinson and why did you choose it?
Yes, so I'm from California, which is about a 10 to 12 hour travel from Dickinson. But I actually had a bit of an unconventional high school experience because I went to boarding school in Massachusetts. A lot of my family is from the Massachusetts area. So in high school, about halfway through, I decided to go to boarding school. So I went there for my last 2 years of high school. And at my boarding school, they would have college advising to help students find which college was best for them. And then also college fairs, like what Sadie was talking about. So I first found Dickinson when my advisor suggested to me that I look into it. And then I met the Dickinson representatives at a college fair, got along very well with them. Finally ended up visiting the campus a few months later with my mom when we were looking at a series of colleges. And it was one of my top 3 choices during the college application process. And in the end, Dickinson had great financial support for me, and then also all of the language and study abroad opportunities that I was looking for. And so it ended up being the perfect choice for me.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to know, Dickinson, we offer international students the same scholarships and financial aid opportunities that we do US students. And so the financial aid and scholarship opportunities are there for Italian students. And I know I have one of my students from the Netherlands. So all of our international students are eligible for the same great financial opportunities that Anna found. Hannah, what about you? Closer to Pennsylvania?
Yeah, I'm from right outside of Philadelphia, so Dickinson is only about 2 hours from my house. But originally, when I was looking at colleges, I started looking at a lot of larger universities throughout mostly the Northeast. And I found very quickly that I was scared of being lost in a school. And I knew that I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I didn't feel comfortable applying into a certain school or major. And so then I shifted my focus to start looking at liberal arts schools and just started touring all the schools. And I know that's a little bit more difficult for international students, but I think there's still opportunities to talk with people on campus that are virtually a really great way to know the community. And what finally attracted me to Dickinson the most was the community. I liked the pillars that Dickinson stood for, sustainability and global education, and the fact that at a liberal arts, people really love to learn. And I knew that I wanted to be in a community that valued all of those 3 things. So I applied to Dickinson. That was actually the only school I applied to. So I just knew that's where I wanted to be because I wanted to be surrounded by those types of people.
Awesome. And Delphine, round us out from Chicago, Illinois. So right in the middle of the United States, how did you find Dickinson?
Yeah, so from the Midwest to Pennsylvania, that's also about like a 10-hour drive. So not very close at all. And I discovered Dickinson, I think it was, we had visits to our high school from colleges around the US that would come in and share their experiences, the opportunities at that college, similar to this kind of gathering. And I went to a few of them and actually decided to apply to Dickinson along with another series of liberal arts colleges and also larger universities. I had kind of a mix of the 2. And in the end, what drew me to Dickinson again was their strong foreign language and global study program, because I knew that was what I wanted to pursue in my life and dedicate my life to. And actually through my studies and also my experience with Dickinson, I discovered their strong sustainability program, which became a big pillar of my career and my future work, but wasn't something that initially drew me. But it kind of reaffirmed my decision to commit to that school. And yeah, it was a kind of initial was drawn by the international programs and the language programs, and then it was strengthened by their environmental studies and sustainability program.
Awesome.
Well, I am impressed. And there's a question from one of our attendees who says they're very enthusiastic about hearing all your stories. And he has a question about the essays. So basically, it's about the admission process. So when did you start to apply? So usually I say to my advisee that it takes a lot of time, so they really need to prepare ahead of time, almost a year. Just for international students, for Italian students, it takes more time to prepare, because there are several, the documentation is huge in comparison with you. And so basically when he mentioned the essays, I believe that's a general question about the admission. So his specific question is, how many hours a day did you study in order to write the essays? I believe that we could also talk in general about the admission. And did you apply through Common App? This is like a side questions that I'm asking.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I also think this points out the difference between a university admissions process and a liberal arts admissions process. So at Dickinson, we take what we call holistic admissions. And so what this means is that whenever Anna, and Delphine applied, they submitted their common application, but they also submitted their essay and their transcripts and their test scores and their letters of recommendation. And so at a place like Dickinson, we review all of that. We do not just look at a GPA or test scores. We look at everything submitted in the application. One component of that is going to be the essay. And so in terms of preparation, I don't know if any of our students or alumni have any, remember back to whenever you applied to Dickinson, or how long you spent on your college essay, or if you have any tips for any students writing their college essay currently.
I know for me personally, I had quite a bit of support when it came to writing my essays, from family, from friends, and then also from high school academic advisors. So my experience was probably a bit different than the average college application process. But I think I started working on my applications. I applied to 8 colleges, and I started working on those applications about midsummer, between my 3rd and my 4th year of high school. And then I submitted some of them in December, and some of them in January of that year. So it took, about probably 6 months to do the full application process. I wrote and rewrote quite a few times. I think I had to write about 5 or 6 separate essays because some of the colleges I applied to did not use Common App. But for colleges that use the Common application, that was very helpful because you wrote one application basically for each. So that was definitely a plus.
Any other timeline tips or any other comments about the essay?
I think I have one tip I'd say. I'm trying to remember how much time I spent preparing. And I think it was similarly, I started working in the summer before my senior year. So again, between the third and fourth years, and submitted them throughout the fall and initial winter, I think was also the timeline. And I think it's important, some of these questions that are asked can seem kind of vague and general at times, but it's important to show what makes you unique, but also be honest and true to who you are in these essays. So make, what sets you apart shine, but also don't over embellish, I would say. Make sure you're staying honest and true to yourself, but also showing your motivations and what has led you to pursuing a certain major or certain field of study. So showing whatever is making you a special candidate and different from the others, because we all have different traits. That's the beauty. We're all, a diverse student body. And so I would say, focus and highlight that in your application.
Awesome. Any other questions, Laura or anyone in the audience?
I don't see questions from the attendees, but I still have a couple more questions. One is about internships and then job opportunities for international students. So for Italian students, if it's possible for Italian students to work on campus. And then I have also I would like to emphasize the club's activities if there's some time left, and also so in internships, clubs work. I heard that there's like a language requirement, and maybe it depends on the major you choose. For an Italian student, is the Italian student okay? Can the Italian student study Italian like for her language requirement? Or maybe taking some cultural courses like history, linguistics, I don't know, maybe not, language courses.
Yeah. So I'll cover that first, and then I'll pass off the internships question maybe to Delphine, just because I know COVID has affected our seniors' experiences. But if Anna and Hannah have any other things to talk about with internships, we can talk about that as well. But in regards to the language requirement, Dickinson is one of the few institutions that requires language study for all of its students. But the exception would be our international students. And so for the Italian students in the audience, they would not be required to come to Dickinson and study another world language because English would fulfill that requirement. And so, but I also think that Dickinson attracts language lovers. And so if you're an Italian student who loves and wants to learn Russian or Hebrew or Arabic, you are more than absolutely able to take those classes. But as you've also heard, we have an amazing Italian studies department here at Dickinson. So you might want to continue and take some Italian classes here. And so that is absolutely possible here, but it would not be a requirement for the Italian students attending Dickinson. So let's move to internships. So again, I'm not quite sure how COVID has affected Anna and Hannah's opportunities, but does anyone want to talk about kind of internships at Dickinson?
Sure, I can. I, despite COVID, was still able to have an internship this summer. And while I was on campus last spring, I interned at the US Army War College and was learning about, I was researching Southeast Asian foreign policy. And then this summer, I was able to intern at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, which is a foreign policy think tank in Washington, DC. And the support that I got from the Dickinson Career Center was amazing. They helped me through the application process. I applied to probably 12 or 15 different internships, and they were always there when I had questions about if somebody could read my resume or my cover letter. They were a very helpful resource that then took me from that step to helping me prep for an interview and then eventually getting this internship. So that was a really interesting and amazing experience that I'm glad Dickinson was able to help me find.
Awesome. So you did an internship in Carlisle, where we are located, but then also Washington, D.C., which is also pretty popular. And then we also have had students intern in 35 different countries. And so you're not limited to just the United States, but whenever you're abroad, a lot of our students will seek out internship opportunities. Anna or Delphine, any internship input from Dickinson?
Sure. I interned and also worked throughout my time at Dickinson. So I had the opportunity to intern with actually an Italian professor for the summer and was helping in editorial and the publication of her. She runs a journal, an online journal. So actually building off the connections with your professors is also a great resource. And then in addition, I was able to intern at an NGO based in Chicago, so my hometown, during the summer. So I was able to be home with family while also engaging with the local landscape. And then during my actual semesters at Dickinson, I was also working with the Italian department and the language departments. I know there was a question also based on, if international students can work. I worked in the writing center as an Italian tutor. And so, Italian seniors and along with Italian teaching assistants actually help beginning Italian students in writing and in correcting their grammar and their syntax and different styles of writing. So it was a great experience to, just soon after the beginning of my experience learning Italian, to actually give back and to support students who had been in my position just 3 years back. And there were many international students who also got involved with teaching assistantships and tutoring foreign language. That's a great experience to meet other students and like continue to build the world language community.
Yeah, so we have around 15% of our students are international students. And so there are plenty of job opportunities on campus just because of the restrictions of the visa to work off campus. And so there are a lot of different working opportunities on campus for international students. Laura, did you have a question about that?
I have several questions, but I mean, I will ask you once again to focus on the scholarships, because I imagine that the scholarship you mentioned for international students are merit scholarships, right?
Yeah, so so Dickinson offers between $15,000 and $35,000 per year in merit scholarships. But in addition, we also offer need-based financial aid as well. And so if a student did not receive scholarships to Dickinson, but they are in need of more finances, Dickinson does provide need-based financial aid as well for our international students. And so it's very rare for an institution in the US to offer both, but Dickinson offers both academic scholarships and need-based financial aid for our international students.
Wow, I'm very impressed because, as you said, it's rare. It's not so common. Usually it's just merit-based scholarships that international students can I missed the verb. I mean, can have, let's say, okay. One last question is about clubs, because I've seen that all of you mentioned all the extracurricular activities, and all of you was like doing different things. So how many clubs are available, and how important like extracurricular activities are for international students? And if there's like a minimum of clubs that an international student is supposed to like register to, if it's like mandatory or if it's optional. Like, I'm interested in the Dickinson's point of view. And then, okay.
Yeah, I think this is another really big difference between the US education system and the European system. I think, my panelists can chime in, but I think that at Dickinson, academics are very important, but it's not everything. And so I know that our panelists have shown that they've been equally involved with things on campus. So Anna, Hannah, or Delphine, can you talk about kind of that life outside of the classroom, clubs and organizations, and then any maybe that you might know that some of our international students join or may be popular with our international students?
Yeah, so I think a good way to frame it is that you don't have to do clubs. It's more that you get to do clubs or extracurricular activities. So they're by no means compulsory. It's more just a really great opportunity to meet new people who have similar interests as you that you might not get to know otherwise. Maybe they're not in your classes, but you can have build relationships with them in these different like student organizations. So and especially for international students, I think it's a great way to get involved and meet new people. In pretty much all of the clubs and organizations that I'm a part of, there are international students who participate. And it's probably one of my favorite parts of going to Dickinson is all the different clubs you get to do, because you can meet so many different people. And if you have an interest in something, there is a group for it. And that way you can meet other people with kind of shared passions.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I agree that it's definitely a very important part of student life. I personally club sport, the equestrian team, and club sports are an excellent way to get engaged not only with the Dickinson community, but also with life outside of Dickinson, because you will compete with other teams and you'll travel and you'll get to see a little bit more of other colleges and universities and make that way. So I know that that's definitely something that's very popular among both American students and also international students. Yeah, so I would, if you're into sports, definitely recommend a club sports team.
Awesome. So because of time, I have one last question for our panelists, and then we can end it here. So I'm really curious in terms of one piece of advice you would give high school students who are listening in or who may watch this later. What's one piece of advice you would give them in terms of looking for a college or university?
I guess the one piece of advice I would give is look for a community that you want to be a part of, because you will be spending a lot of time with the people on this campus. So you want to look for a place where people are going to share your values and share your interests. And that's kind of what helped me make my decision, is try to pick where you want to be and who you want to be surrounded by, because that'll make like all of the difference like once you're there.
And Hannah, with that, in terms of who you surround yourself by, how would you describe a Dickinsonian? So if a student is listening in and they're thinking, maybe Dickinson could be right for me, how would you describe a Dickinsonian?
I think a Dickinsonian is multifaceted and loves learning. So I think that there's no one way to describe somebody, because all the people I meet and all the friends that I have a really diverse range of interests. And I think that that's what makes Dickinson unique, is that it attracts people who are interested in learning and interested in like having new opportunities and growing as people. So I think a Dickinsonian is somebody who loves learning, interested in everything.
Awesome. Anna or Delphine, what one tip would you give for high school students?
This might be a bit silly, but the number one thing that I considered when I was choosing a college was how many seasons I wanted to have every year. So I was comparing schools in the south of the US where you get rain in the winter and heat in the summer, with Massachusetts and Maine, where you get about 6 months of winter and then spring, summer and fall all in the course of, about 2 months each. So in thinking about that, I wanted to pick somewhere where I would be able to experience a little bit of difference between the different semesters and the different months of the year. And then also location was very important for me. I know I don't like big cities very much, so I knew I didn't want to go to New York or Boston or Seattle. I wanted to stay somewhere relatively small, where I could get to know the community off campus, get to know the town, get to know the surrounding nature a bit better than I would if I had picked a large city.
Great. And I just threw a photo album into the chat of all 4 seasons at Dickinson. So, so students and attendees can see all the snow and the beautiful leaves, and then the summer days at Dickinson. All right, Delphine, round us out, and we'll end with you.
Thanks. These are stunning photos. Thanks for sharing that. It's making me nostalgic from my college days. I think, yeah, when choosing a college, it's important to think with your head, but also your heart. So it's important to be realistic and rational on what you want to study and where you want to take your career and where your academic passions lie. But as people have been sharing, it's also important to follow your heart and thinking about everything else aside from the studies that's going to be impacting your life. So the people that you're going to be surrounding yourself with, the places and the environments you're going to be interacting with, and the overall mood and feeling you're going to be having day to day in this space, because you are living and breathing the college, which is something different than potentially a European university where you don't have a campus. You don't necessarily have this kind of bubble of college students to work with. So it's really important to have the balance between the academic, the more obviously serious career-oriented side, but also staying true to the people you want to be interacting with, the other Dickinsonians you want to get to know, and what kind of profile to look for when choosing a college.
Awesome. So I would love to just thank the panelists. Sadie had to leave us a little bit early, but I want to thank our panelists, but then also Education USA and the Fulbright office in Rome for hosting us. Hopefully this was helpful for you. And if you have any other questions, I will go ahead and put my email into the chat. So if you do have any other questions, I'm happy to answer, but Laura, I will hand it off to you to end us today.
And also let's remind everyone that they can take a virtual tour of Dickinson College. And I'm very enthusiastic about this session. And so thank you so much for being here. It was great. And you've been able to answer all my questions. And so I would like to thank all of you for, finding the time to be here today. And so, I have your email, and I would like to apologize because I mispronounced your name, Rylan, right? So I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But and I believe that also your students are available just in case we receive some questions. I would share them with you, Rylan, and then, you would just share it with them.
Yeah.
And thank you so much. I was so happy to meet you today and to see Delphine once again. And I'm very happy to see that she's doing great in Turin. And so thank you so much. It was great.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye to everyone.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ciao.